We believe that the biggest challenge we humanity are facing, the climate change, can only be solved with AI because there are so many different challenges that we can't actually tackle manually.
Now we are actually at a threat level that if we do not improve our carbon emissions at this moment and control it heavily, then our existence is at stake. But still, businesses, countries are very much ignorant toward this thing, and they do not. This thing is not in their agenda as well, right? For example, if I talk about my own country, I don't see much awareness of carbon emissions and carbon footprints, right?
We see a lot of businesses trying to solve this issue without artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and they face a lot of challenges. So first of all, very often they work with consultants and they use tools like Excel spreadsheets, for example.
Yeah. Yes.
The
Mostly it is
biggest challenge
used.
with yes, absolutely. And the biggest challenge with that is that the calculations and the data in general is not accurate at all.
Hello everyone, my name is Ali. I'm the CEO of Al-burraq Technologies. After a long time, not actually a long time, I think it's been a week or something. We are here again with another amazing personality, Sofia. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm very excited to have this episode because I'm going to learn a lot about the carbon footprints and all the things you're doing in net zero.
Fantastic. I'm very excited to be here.
Right. Thank you so much. Okay, Sophia, it would be great if you can give us if you can give your background so that our audience can connect with you, and then we can move.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Sofia Fominova. I'm one of the two co-founders of Net0. And Net0 is an AI-first carbon management platform that helps businesses to measure, reduce, and report carbon emissions.
Right.
We are trusted by large public and private companies, work with a few Fortune 500 companies, and also governments around the world as well.
So when you say that you are an AI company which is calculating carbon footprints, what do you mean by that? So tell us more about that, how you are calculating carbon footprints through AI.
Yes, for sure. So our main mission is to decarbonize the economy, and we do it through AI. We believe that the biggest challenge we humanity are facing, the climate change, can only be solved with AI because there are so many different challenges that we can't actually tackle manually, whether it's data collection and carbon management in terms of carbon accounting, or whether it's reducing carbon emissions. It's very costly and time consuming to solve these issues manually. So artificial intelligence is really at the core of our product, at the heart of everything that we do through our different stages of carbon management.
So when you say that your company is doing great through that AI tool which you have developed, so if I ask you specifically how you are helping the businesses through AI, right? So how would you
Mhm.
answer that thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first stage of carbon management is always data collection. And
Hmm.
on its own, that's a big challenge because data is very often diverse. It comes in different formats. It's not unified. It's stored in different locations as well. So this is the first step. And to accumulate all the data, to collect it, to measure and manage it and put it all in one in our case, system net
Yes,
zero
yes,
dashboard,
yes.
we use AI for that. So we collect information via API integrations or ERP
Hmm,
systems. We
hmm,
also have our own sensors that we
hmm.
help businesses install to collect raw data as well. So
Right,
that's one of the
right.
examples. Another example, for example, would be reducing carbon emissions. For that, we have developed a different set of tools. A simulator is one of them, an initiative finder is another one. These tools allow businesses to strategize for carbon reduction specifically,
Hmm,
c-
hmm.
be able to absorb all different data on the internet through governments, through other businesses, understand all different programs and strategies that they can implement, and also consider the financial cost as well as the environmental impact, and then
Right,
choose and implement the strategies that work for their business specifically. And again,
right,
it's very difficult to do manually, and artificial intelligence helps a lot because all of these tools are based on our own proprietary AI models.
right. So I do understand that data collection is very important when you talk about the carbon emissions, and you have to calculate the carbon footprints. But in that sense, don't you think that the data available in every country or in every industry is very diverse? In the first world economies, yes, they are focusing on all these carbon emissions and carbon footprints, and they do have some of the data available. But even now, that is not enough for the first world countries. Let If we talk about the developing countries and the third world countries, we should forget about that data which needs to be there for the carbon emissions or carbon footprints. So don't you think it's a very serious thing, and how it is going to be resolved?
It is definitely one of the most important questions because we can't reduce what we can't measure, but we can't measure what we don't have the data for. So it's definitely a very serious question. What we see, we actually have clients all around the world, whether it's in America or India. We're now talking to a very large company in Kenya as well, Australia, Europe, and so on. So what we see, there are data gaps all around the world. There is data available through invoices or, as I mentioned, ERP systems, and there are data gaps, especially when it comes to suppliers. For us, we love working with very complex businesses, with complex supply chains specifically, and most of our customers, they have thousands and tens of thousands vendors, right, throughout their whole supply chain. So collecting data from vendors is one of the most challenging parts of the journey. And as you mentioned, very often it's because it's hard to get the data. Sometimes the data is not there. Sometimes you have to measure the data. And this is why I've mentioned sensors that we can help businesses to install to collect the raw data. And then another challenge is the transparency. Sometimes the data is there, but vendors are not actually happy to share it because that would show that some of the strategies have to be implemented to make them
Yes.
more sustainable. So there are lots of different challenges around data, not just the gaps in the existent data, but yeah, whether it's transparency or effective and efficient way of guessing the data, unifying the data, there are lots.
And especially when you talk about businesses are not all the businesses are that much friendly to provide the data, even if they have available. So what do you do in that case when you do know that data is available but the business do not want to share that data? So what do
Yeah,
you
well,
do
first
in
of
that
all,
case?
yeah, so that's a great question. So first of all, we always work with our client. The
Hmm.
client is always happy to provide the data because they come to
Yeah.
us with an intent of measuring their carbon emissions in order to
Hmm,
reduce.
hmm.
So internal data is very often there, and they're happy to share it.
Right.
When it comes to suppliers, it can be challenging, but there are lots of regulations, and there are more and more regulations, as well as pressure from partners, investors, end users, and consumers. And all of that pressure put on businesses encourages businesses to actually be a lot more transparent about data. And it's also mostly about the timing. If a business is not happy to share the data, they know that at some point they will have to. And if they need to introduce some changes, for example, they better do it very soon in order to start sharing data again as soon as possible, because it will be required of every business.
I can agree with that. That sooner or later they will have to provide the data. They will have a lot of pressure regarding this. But I think the stage where it should start, where we should have taken care of our planet, that is already been passed. And now we are actually at a threat level, that if we do not improve our carbon emissions at this moment and control it heavily, then our existence is at stake. But still, businesses, countries are very much ignorant toward this thing, and they do not. This thing is not in their agenda as well, right? For example, if I talk about my own country, I don't see much awareness of carbon emissions and carbon footprints, right? If you go to other countries, like if you go to, for example, I'm talking about my country first, and then if I talk about Saudi Arabia, you'll see a use of plastic a lot. So, what do you say? What is your stance in that case?
Well, I think I'm quite positive about the impact that we can still create. I would agree
Hmm.
with you that we should have taken better care of the planet. We should have been doing that for many, many decades and years, of course.
Hmm.
But we have to work with what we have. So obviously, the
Yeah.
problem is there. More people, more consumers, investors, partners, businesses are aware of that, which is good. I think the level of education is on a good level right now, and people do understand that we have contributed ourselves to this climate change, and we have to work really hard to do better for our planet. Um, but I love focusing on solutions. So I think the problem is there, and now we need to understand how to implement the solutions, scale them really fast, ensure that these solutions are very effective and they're followed by as many businesses and as many governments as possible as well. We, for example, work with large businesses that always recommend businesses in the same industry to us as clients. And also we work with governments. I'll give you an example of a government in Monaco, for example, who have we have developed a few separate tools. They're carbon calculators, and they've been implemented on the national level specifically. So if you're organizing an event in Monaco, or if you're a visitor, you can go and calculate your carbon footprint, and then the government of Monaco also inspires you and educates you on how to reduce carbon emissions.
Hmm.
That's a simple example that scales because it addresses every single person in Monaco. When it comes to businesses, obviously businesses are huge emitters depending on the
Hmm.
industry,
Hmm.
but for many businesses, carbon emissions are in operations that they do on the daily basis. And the bigger the business, very often they
Yeah.
higher the amount of carbon emissions they emit. So I think if we focus on solutions, but we as a world and as all businesses agree that we need to be working on it, allocating funds and budgets, trying to encourage more and more teams to work on it, implement solutions across vendors as well. I think we can still achieve great results.
I really like your approach that when you say that we have to start somehow from some point. I really like this thing. And then when you said that you focus on the solution things. So these things are perfect, that we have to take start somehow. So I really appreciate your thoughts on that. So the next question I have is, let's say today, if you do not have your AI tool in net zero, uh, how would be different uh, of calculation of carbon footprints if you are doing it manually versus your with your AI tool? What is the
Yeah,
difference?
that's a great question, and we actually see a lot of businesses trying to solve this issue without artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and they face a lot of challenges. So first of all, very often they work with consultants,
Mm.
and they use tools like Excel spreadsheets, for example.
Yeah. Yes.
The
Mostly it is
biggest
used.
challenge with yes, yes, absolutely, and the biggest challenge with that is that the calculations and the data in general is not accurate at all. So most of the time it's approximation. And again, for large businesses, and especially those businesses that have to report on carbon emissions, it's not good enough. So the systems are very often outdated, not accurate, and also the data is not real time. So I've spoken to one large business based in America, and they said, look, we focus on reduction strategies all the time, but the data that we work with is always outdated. So in order to come up for a strategy, we use the data from 2-3 years. Um, from the past, so all of their strategies are not actually that efficient because they don't know what's happening with their carbon portfolio right now. And also, it would be very time consuming and very expensive because, again, to calculate all the emissions manually, it would take a lot more people. I'll give you an example. For one of our Fortune 500 customers, we've collected data from 1.2 million invoices in January this year. That's just in 1 month. In order for that to be done manually, it would require you a huge team of people. And again, they would have to check and recheck everything to make sure that calculations are accurate. It's almost impossible for them to find the gaps in the data as well. So if something is missed, most likely they're not going to notice that at all. So this is why we require updated tools rather than stick to our Excel tables that we used to have many years ago. Now we have much more powerful tools available to us.
Right. I agree with that thing too, that the moment you calculate carbon footprints, that is already outdated because you are calculating on the basis of previous data. If you are doing it through Excel sheets, right? And with the AI models, yes, you can improve that. So yes, AI is very helpful in that. So in the last, Sophia, if I would ask you that what are the tips you would like to give to the businesses in order to reduce their carbon footprints?
Um, well, my main advice would be to make sure that they allocate enough time and enough resources and team members, whether internally or externally, to make
Hmm.
sure they start the journey as soon as possible.
Right.
Um, when working with large businesses, we very often talk to businesses and they say, look, we have an good idea of what's happening with our scope 1, scope 2 emissions. We now want to focus on scope 3 emissions. Our deadline is for all calculation is in 2 months because we have to report. And then we also want to understand how to save emissions and communicate it to the public. And very often I'm inspired by that on the one hand because they're very motivated and there is an urge and the need for a solution like ours. So that makes me very happy. But then I always try to take a step back and say that, look, transitioning to net zero is not very quick. I know that there is this opinion that you just quickly measure or estimate your carbon footprint, you offset with a single press of a button, and all is done, everything's good. Transitioning to net zero actually requires a very thoughtful and strategic approach because decarbonizing your business or the economy is the full business transformation. It is not as simple. It is not a quick journey. It requires a lot of resources. And the earlier you start and the more serious approach you have to it, the better. With these clients who want to, calculate all of their emissions and strategize, and they have 2-3 months to do it because they have to report, I always encourage them to understand how serious it is. And also another point is that we at net zero, we don't believe that sustainability should be a cost to a business. It should actually deliver profitability, enhance profitability, and deliver positive return on investment. So the more resources and strategic approach you have for carbon reduction, the better it's going to be for you in terms of delivering positive ROI in the long term. Starting as soon as possible, taking it very seriously, not trying to cut the corners, and ensuring that you understand how to turn sustainability into profitability in the long term.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense, and I hope the businesses are going to learn from this one. That eventually, and for the, I agree with that thing that it should be profitable. Until unless it is going to be profitable, businesses are not going to be attracted toward it. So thank you so much, Sophia, for your time. Your insights are perfect and spot on, and I appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. It
Thank
was a
you.
pleasure.
For the audience, keep watching our episodes so that you can learn more and more from the tech stars, from the experienced resources from of the industry. And I thank you, Sophia, again, and see you in the next episode.